When you've spent 30 years on the road, that final delivery is supposed to be more than just a job. It's the last page in a long, long story. It's the finish line after millions of miles, staring down that endless blacktop. But for me, that last page wasn't an ending. It was a descent into a nightmare I'd never really wake up from. And it all started, as these things so often do, with a simple change on a screen. A single line of text that would reroute my life straight into darkness. I could feel every one of my 30 years on the road deep in my bones. 30 years of greasy breakfasts at truck stops, of watching sunrises climb over the Rockies and sunsets sink into the Pacific. It was 30 years of listening to the quiet hum of my diesel car and the constant crackle of my ears, the CB radio that had been my most loyal companion. This trip, a load of electronics heading east on I-80, was supposed to be it, the grand finale. After this, I was selling my rig and buying a small boat. No more logbooks, or as I liked to call them, swindle sheets. No more way stations. No more lonely nights in a sleeper cab. Just me, a lake, and a whole lot of peace and quiet. My Kenworth, my K-Whopper, felt less like a machine and more like a part of my own body. I knew its every groan, every shudder. It wasn't just my office, it was my home. The cab was a comfortable mess of my life. A worn photo of my late wife taped to the dash, a stack of paperback thrillers, and that permanent lingering scent of stale coffee. I was making good time, just cruising at the double nickel, 55 miles per hour, letting the miles roll by. I just passed a yardstick for mile 90 when my onboard computer pinged. It was a message from my travel agent, the dispatcher. The message was a change to my route, a last-minute pickup. I sighed, a noise somewhere between frustration and just plain tired. This stuff always seemed to happen, always one last curveball, but this one felt different. The address wasn't a warehouse or a distribution center. It was just a rural route number, tacked onto a farm name I'd never heard of, miles and miles off the main super slab. It would add at least 3 hours to my trip, pushing my final drop-off into the dead of night. I keyed my mic. Breaker 19. Anyone got a 20 on a place called Blackwood Farms out past exit 210. The radio crackled back, mostly static. Then, a single voice. "That's a negatory, driver. Nothing out there but dirt and darkness. You sure about that route?" I grumbled. I was sure. It was right there on the screen. With a heavy feeling, I hit my signal and took the exit, leaving the familiar river of taillights for the unknown. Well-lit highway quietly shrank to 2 lanes. Then the asphalt just gave up, turning into gravel. My GPS, a standard 4-wheeler model not built for a rig, started to panic. The friendly voice grew hesitant, recalculating again and again as the road twisted into a dirt track, swallowed by dense, menacing trees. My cell signal had died miles back. Outside the small bubble of my headlights, the world was a solid wall of black. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel and the low growl of my engine. A deep, cold unease started to settle in my gut. This felt wrong, all of it. My GPS finally announced, "You have arrived." Arrived where? All I saw was a rusted gate hanging crookedly on its hinges. Beyond it stood the skeletal shapes of a decrepit farmhouse and a big, hulking barn. The house was pitch black, but a single sickly yellow bulb cast a weak glow over the massive sliding door of the barn. The silence was so complete, it felt loud, the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand on end. I killed the engine, and the quiet pressed in on me. I laid on the horn, the blast shocking the stillness. For a long moment, nothing. Then a small door on the side of the barn creaked open, and a figure stepped out. A tall, rail-thin man in greasy overalls, his face lost in the shadows of a low-brimmed hat. "You the pickup?" the man rasped, his voice dry. "Supposed to be," I said, leaning out my window. "Got a manifest for a load here. Headed for Denver. About time," the man grunted, staying put. "You'll need to back it in, all the way to the rear." My internal alarms, the ones sharpened by 3 decades on the road, were screaming. I'd heard the ghost stories over the radio, whispers of drivers lured to remote spots like this. They didn't want the cargo. They wanted the rig, a prize worth a small fortune. The setup was always the same, an isolated location and a demand that puts the truck in a vulnerable "Can't do that," I said, my voice steady. "Company policy. You bring the load to me. I'll open the dry box for you right here." I kept one hand resting near the gear shift. The man's posture shifted. He wasn't slouching anymore. He was rigid, dangerous. I said, "Back it in," he repeated, and this time there was no mistaking the menace. From the deep shadows of the barn, a second figure moved, and I saw it. The unmistakable glint of moonlight on a long metal pipe. That was it. It wasn't a story. It was real. This wasn't a pickup. It was a hijacking. They were going to take my truck and probably leave me in a ditch. Or worse. The image of a meat wagon ambulance flashed in my mind. I wasn't going to be another statistic, another ghost story whispered over the CB. Not on my last run. Not ever. Pure survival instinct took over. I slammed the gear shift into first. I didn't think. I just put the hammer down. My Kenworth's engine roared to life. A beast waking up. The thin man lunged for the door handle, his face finally clear in the cab light. A mask of cold, predatory rage. I didn't even flinch. I stomped the accelerator. The 18-wheeler lurched forward, tearing through the dirt. The thin man jumped back, just as the massive chrome bumper sliced past him. I didn't aim for the gate. I aimed for the fence next to it, smashing the old wood into splinters as I clawed my way back onto the dirt road. A guttural roar exploded behind me. Headlights flared in my mirrors. An old beat-up pickup tore out from behind the barn and gave chase. On this dirt road, it was nimble, and it was gaining on me. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles ghost white. This was their territory, a maze of dark country lanes I didn't know. The pickup pulled alongside. The man in the passenger seat was brandishing the metal pipe, swinging it, trying to shatter my window. But I wasn't just a driver. I was a master of my machine. I knew its weight, its power. I jerked the wheel hard, using the immense bulk of my trailer like a battering ram. The sickening crunch of metal on metal ripped through the night as my trailer slammed into the pickup. The smaller truck spun out of control, careening off the road and crashing hard into a ditch. I didn't slow down. I didn't dare look back. I just kept driving, my foot pressed to the floor, pushing my rig harder than I ever had before. I was hauling mail now, praying for the beautiful, blessed sight of the interstate. If you're finding my story as chilling as the night it happened, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for more true horror stories from the road every single week. I finally saw it. The faint, distant glow of the super slab. Merging onto that on-ramp was the most profound sense of relief I had ever felt. I didn't stop until I reached a massive, brightly lit truck stop, surrounded by other rigs. I practically fell out of my cab, my whole body shaking, and leaned against the warm tires, just gasping for air. I called the police, my voice cracking as I told them what happened. An officer came out, listened patiently, but I saw the doubt in his eyes. A patrol car went out to the coordinates, but they found nothing. Just an abandoned, derelict farmhouse on a dead-end road. There were no men, no wrecked pickup in a ditch. There was nothing to prove it ever happened, except for the deep, violent gouges in my trailer and the wild terror in my eyes. I completed my final delivery. Paperwork was signed, the job was done, and my 30-year career was over. But there was no celebration. I sold the rig the next week. I bought the boat I'd always dreamed of, but I never used it. The quiet solitude I had craved for so long now felt threatening. The sound of a distant engine made me jump. The dark of night became a prison. The open road, once my life's work and a symbol of freedom, was now just a haunting reminder of the night my final chapter was rewritten. I survived my final delivery, yes, but the driver, the man who loved the road, he was gone forever. I left him back on that dark farm road, a ghost in a killer's hunting ground.